And here we go with my commentary track, which admittedly at the start may be a little thin in places because I supervised and handled a lot of the visual effects, but this time, unfortunately, I was not able to be there for the shoot in Ticonderoga. So here we're moving through the hallway with the two orderlies. I read the story of Mind-Sifter when I was young. By the way, here's my first visual effects shot. This shot involves replacing the fluorescent light fixture. The one you're seeing there is not really there. I created it in a 3D program called Lightwave and composited it, as I did almost all my compositing, in After Effects, which is an Adobe program. Here's our one of our main stars, Dr. Jan Hamlin, played by Rivka Ravenwood, who is coming in now and being introduced. This scene also apparently involves the removal of some other artifacts in the background, such as light fixtures and power fixtures and things of that nature, I believe. Tobias Richter may have handled some of that removal. Tobias is a wonderful visual effects man. He handles all of the spaceship effects that you see on Phase 2. Although in this episode we also had Darren Doctorman handling some of the visual effects shots of spaceships. Actually, we released 2 episodes. One with the contemporary Tobias effects, and the other with the more 1960s retro style Darren effects. So you can see either or. My commentary is being done here to the Tobias one, but if you wanted to add them to either, I suppose it might work, although there may be somewhat of a time difference, I'm told. So I'm only recording this one to the Tobias version, just so that you know. So, as mentioned before, that you saw the first of my visual effects shots. Coming up here, you'll see my next VFX shot. That panel in the doorway with the glass window on it is not there. None of that upper half of the door is there. It's all a big green piece of construction paper. So I had to animate in not only the glass, the reflections, little glows and shadows, things of that nature. Kind of a pain, but also a lot of fun. That's part of the challenge of doing visual effects, is the good ones are invisible at best. So here we are with Darren Doctorman's newest opening for Star Trek New Voyages, Star Trek Phase 2. And I gotta say, this is just a beautiful opening. It's a wonderful, wonderful hearkening back to the opening of the 60s, just cleaner. But look at that reflection on the ship. Look at the way it looks like a lacquered model. It doesn't look CGI in that respect. It looks like a physical model, 11 feet long. And in that respect, we captured the look of the 1960s Star Trek very effectively. Also, the way the Enterprise is angled kind of downward and forward as she comes zooming past us here. Look at that. Kind of reminds me of a station wagon from 1972. Those ones they used to give away on The Price is Right or whatever that show was back then. Just the angle of it reminds me of the roofs of those station wagons over the passenger compartment where they had that clerestory window. So now we are in the story, and we're seeing some mental, emotional, and psychic flashbacks going on in Spock's mind in a meditative state. He's not sure what they are yet, but they're stunning and they feel familiar. And this is how we open our credits. I've got to just, and I will several times, I'm sure, just call out to the wonderful, wonderful lighting done and camera work done by Jeff Barklage here. Jeff Barklage and Mark Edward Lewis, the director, just came together and made magic with this film. They're a brilliant team, and I'm glad to be associated with them and hope to continue doing work with them in the future. Here's our first of Tobias's visual effects shots, the Enterprise and the USS Lexington. Lexington is Admiral Withrow's ship. Notice the subtle difference in the lighting here. It's much hotter and flatter, much more like the ship is lit with fluorescent lights, rather than the beautiful modeled Cuckolorist colored lighting that we see aboard our beloved Enterprise. Now, this window you're seeing in the background is completely fabricated, completely CGI. The only thing that was really there was just the blank gray wall, which had colored light pattern across it. This window was created by, once again, our master VFX man, Tobias Richter, in Germany. I believe he's in Cologne, Germany. I could be wrong. I'm sure The internet will correct me on that. Admiral Withrow was played by, I believe Roger Withrow is his name. He's a nice gentleman. I've met him several times on shoots. He comes up from the Deep South. That accent of his is genuine. And he's definitely got that kind of classic military look. At least the way I would imagine it. I'm drinking a Coca-Cola out of an A&W root beer mug as we speak. How's that for anachronistic? I've crossed the streams.
Mr. Spock, has it occurred to you, Jim Kirk,
maybe it's just me, but Withrow's makeup looks a tad heavy there.
Yes.
I was about to say Leonard Brandon. Brandon Stacy, who plays Spock there, is wearing the actual makeup that Leonard Nimoy had, LN1. I think it's a Max Factor makeup, and they custom made it just for him for Star Trek, and that's the same makeup that we have on Brandon there. Which we've got a lot of wonderful, real, actual aspects of this show that are very, very hard to find in fandom nowadays. Right down to the patterns and the materials of the uniforms that came directly from William Tice's own notes and materials. James Cawley is the only person to have that stuff, or maybe one of the only people to have that stuff. James Cawley, our executive producer, used to play Captain Kirk. Actually, is one of the only people in the world with Tice's original patterns for these uniforms. I don't believe anybody else has those except James. So if you get a James Cawley uniform, you're getting as close to the original as is possible.
As of this Stardate, Commander, you are the captain of the Enterprise.
Spock has to play this stuff damping down a lot more emotion than he normally would, because this is a very, very difficult time for him. His psychic link with Kirk is stretched to the breaking point. He is under extreme stress and duress. And it's no wonder that we see that smoldering in his eyes right there. He looks like he's about ready to snap that data chip in half. So now in a transition, we see our girl, the Enterprise, 1701. And here we are on the bridge with a number of new faces. Jeff Bond in the background there playing Dr. McCoy. And Jasmine, I forget Jasmine's last name, playing the lovely Uhura. And Wayne Johnson as Ensign Dawson Walking Bear. Wayne and I have become friends, good guy. I'm totally jealous of his hair. I've always wanted that hair for myself. Damn it. There's Mike Stern. And there's Willie Yee. And there's Kent Schmidt. And I'm blanking right now, I'm sorry. Charles Rudiscotti, my good friend Charles. There's Patrick Cawley in the background. There is Zahn. Jeff Bond did a wonderful job as Dr. McCoy here. I do admit I very deeply miss Doc John Kelly, who played our original Dr. McCoy for like 8 or 9 episodes. But Jeff Bond fills the role nicely without necessarily trying to imitate either actor, either John Kelly or DeForest Kelly. And yet I must admit, no disrespect to Jeff Bond, to me his accent sounds a little more New England. It does not sound all that Southern. I'm hoping that if he continues playing McCoy, and I hope he does, that he will just play it without an accent, just play it straight, because he sure has the character down nicely. Look at that intensity. That's a McCoy move, grabbing that arm and pulling that arm of that chair around like that's McCoy, man. And Shia, who I have not yet met, who's playing our Sulu now. We do have a bit of a revolving door with actors, but that's okay. I kind of regard Phase 2 almost like a repertory theater, and actors will change in repertory theaters. Look at James Bond. There have been like 12 or 14 of them, haven't there? I mean actors, not movies. There have been like 28 actors who all play James. They've had 5 actors in the same movie playing James Bond. So I think that we can get away with some changes in actors here and there, and give people a chance to try their own fit on the character, kind of like we did with Shakespeare plays. You know, nobody got mad because a different actor played Othello every time. We wanted to see how the actor would interpret Othello. And the same thing here in many respects with Star Trek. Although I really do like Brandon as Spock. And I'm glad that he's been staying with us for a while now. Excuse me. That Coke is always better the second time down, you know? And here's our Enterprise heading off to somewhere in deep space. And Kirk, wake up. Wow. Into the camera. And that straitjacket recently just got sold. Auction. I guess it was sold. I don't know if it was auctioned or sold, but James Cawley sold it. It was autographed. I think it was autographed by... I don't know who autographed it, actually. It may have been autographed by Brian Gross, who's our new Captain Kirk. I'm not sure. So again, your move, Internet. But here we will be coming into another of my visual effects moments very briefly. I think. They're going to have a bit of a conversation, some exposition being laid out here. Look at the way she looks. I was born in the late 1950s, and I remember when women looked like this. Not exactly my mom necessarily, although to a degree, especially the color of the lipstick and the pinkishness of the rouge on the cheeks. The colors, women's makeup tended to be a bit more pronounced back in the 50s. And then when the 60s and the hippie era and the flower child era came along, people tended towards a much more naturalistic or even non-makeup at all approach. Women. And then through the 80s, it became a little more colorful again with the big hair and stuff like that. So this looks very authentic to the 50s. I remember this look. And yeah, I'll talk about that flickering doggone damn light. That drove me crazy. I was having to do matte paintings in the background of some places in Kirk's room, which we'll see later, we'll talk about later. And those blasted gall darn friggin' second head of second friggin' red as satin flickering damn lights. Just, oh, I had to track all of them into the paintings. There's one of my first matte shots. Full 3D matte shot, multiple layers, combination of the high school at Ticonderoga and the now long gone abandoned hospital at Ticonderoga with a 3D fence. And on the TV in the background, you see Rod Serling back there. That's the Twilight Zone. And that is not really there. I superimposed that in, of course, after the fact. And I was given, oh, here comes our James is now as, who is he? Who is that guy? Hey, man. You a colonel or something? You're a colonel, aren't you? Elvis has left the brain trust. I'm out of here.
Don't worry about that guy. He's been here forever. He thinks he's Elvis.
I hate that guy. So now I got to choose what we saw of the Twilight Zone's Nightmare at 20,000 feet. So I timed it so that when the alarm goes off here, Kirk in the Shatner in the background is also freaking out. I got to do that. We did some dissolving. My justification in my mind is maybe it's 1958. They didn't even have it then, but maybe it's a rerun. Notice the fingerprints on the glass. We'll do a callback to that in a moment in the next match shot you're going to see. But yeah, we know it's a conceit, but the chances to see three Captain Kirks on screen all at once was just too good to pass up, folks. So yeah, and there's no sound in space either. So you know what? Live with it. But I got to choose what moments of Shatner we saw up there, so I chose the ones that hopefully best reflected what was, kind of echoed emotionally what was going on in the scene with our actors, and hopefully to get a laugh out of you folks also, because we were playing it for laughs. So here comes my next big map shot. I'm reasonably proud of this. I would have changed the lighting a little bit had I had more time, but notice the fingerprints and the smudging on the glass there. I hadn't even seen the prior shots when I did this, so a little bit of cosmic tumblers happening there. On the wall, you can't see it now, but there's a graffiti pecked into the wall that says, "One flew east, one flew west, one flew over the cuckoo's nest," along with a date marker. Somebody marked in 1234 slash 1234 slash for 5 days of the week. So I tried to put in little hints there. If you go back and look in the sky, the night sky, the first constellation you'll see is Orion. He's my favorite constellation. He just goes hunting his way through the sky, and he's always there for me. So I often stick him in shots whenever I have a star field as seen from Earth. You'll see Orion in there. Brian Gross is just a wonderful actor. I wish I could act as well as he was. I'm a trained actor also, but man, he just makes it look so wonderful and brilliant. So meanwhile, back in the Enterprise, flying right along. And here we have a nice intense scene with Spock and McCoy. I may be quiet for a few minutes and let you folks just watch this scene and let it digest, since I don't have a lot to say here about visual effects. Although there were some effects done in here that involve cleaning up Spock's wig. The back of Spock's wig tends to sometimes stick out from the back of the nape of his neck. And so sometimes it has to be kind of smoothed out a little bit with visual effects to erase some of that.
Is that the answer you were looking for?
How can someone as brilliant as you be so damn stupid?
I'm a vocal.
That's an explanation, not an excuse. You're a captain now.
Luckily, I am in a position now where I can delegate that work to others who are up-and-coming visual effects artists who are interning, who want to learn. And in that respect, Phase 2 is wonderful. It allows people the chance to get pretty professional-looking credits without the catch-22 of having to find a paying job without any experience to begin with. We really are a teaching facility in that respect, and I encourage anyone who is interested in joining us, please put some work together, send it in. You never know. That's how I got started with Phase 2. Granted, I had come up through visual effects and I had worked on a number of feature films prior to this, and had actually trained with the people who did effects for the original Star Trek series. So in that respect, I kind of had a leg up. But don't let any of that stop you. If you want to try and get involved with visual effects in Phase 2, or any other shows or films for that matter, it's a great time to be alive and doing this kind of stuff, because you don't need millions of dollars worth of equipment. You can do it with a PC or a Mac and apps that you can download. And it really is a wonderful time to be doing this kind of thing. The only problem, and this is a political and economic problems, is a lot of our effects work nowadays is done overseas, India and other third world countries. And I have a problem with that. I really believe we need to get NAFTA out of there, bring the work back to the U.S. Granted, it may be more expensive, but we have, ever since those strikes, those green screen strikes happening in regard to Life of Pi, we've been seeing, and it's come to light, that visual effects artists in this country nowadays are just treated like cogs in a wheel. A lot of people have been worked to the bone. A few people have even been worked to the point of having heart attacks or even dying at their workstations. And we need to treat them like the artists that they always have been. Back when I was coming up, visual effects artists were paid well, decently enough to make a good living and live in a nice home. Nowadays, I remember when I was working as a freelance photojournalist and reporter at the Times newspapers in Northern Virginia, and none of us working there, none of the reporters working there would ever be able to live on their own. Everybody had to have roommates, unless you were in management or editorial. And now it's the same way with visual effects artists, when it didn't used to be. When I was young and first started in the industry, a working effects artist could easily afford a nice home in the San Fernando Valley. Not anymore. You're lucky to get an apartment, and probably have to have roommates. So something needs to change there, and I'm just glad that Phase 2 has given me the opportunity to be able to hone my craft. We can't make money on Phase 2. It is a volunteer effort, but I have gained so much other things than money out of this that have been worth it, and especially good friends such as Charles Root right there. He and I have collaborated together on a number of projects. We have become very good friends, and I cannot imagine life without the people that I have come to know at Phase 2, at Star Trek New Voyages, Star Trek Phase 2. So I'm looking forward to meeting Jeff Bond there and getting to know him as well. I mean, literally, my fold of friends has increased by a couple hundred people now, thanks to my Star Trek work, that I didn't have before. Before 2007, I had the average amount of friends that I suppose a regular person has. But not like this, not now. And I get to do fun, creative work, and we get to make Star Trek. And, I consider what we're doing, it may not be pew, 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 may not have tons of explosions, may not have a lot of boobs. Well, we can always use more boobs, I suppose. Anyone can always use more boobs. I like boobs. Who doesn't? But these programs that we're putting together, they have engaging stories, things that you can think about and chew on for days afterwards, things that you're proud to show your friends. and happy to look at again. And it's an honor and a privilege to be associated with this with Star Trek New Voyages, Star Trek Phase 2. So thank you to James Cawley and all my friends, and I'm filling time here because it's a good scene, but it's a commentary track, so I guess you're here to hear me yak. Yakety, yakety, yak. Take another sip of soda. Dutch angle, beautiful red chorus lighting. A self-mind mill. Never seen that before. And of course, it's ripe for jokes, of course. I won't even go there. You can go there yourselves. You're going to anyways. You're a bunch of kids. Yeah, I know, I did too. Hey, don't you ooh me. Okay, here's another one of my shots. This is the last visual effects shots that I did, kind of as an emergency. The force field door there. Obviously, it's not really there. It's just a green. The edge of the door is just painted green wood. That's all it was. And I just literally had to put something together within like a day or so, because honestly, another artist had been brought on who had wanted to do the work. I am told this was a professional artist, and the person never completed anything other than a test. Still is the only thing I saw, and I think they may have bitten off more than they could have chewed, because I think they wanted to try to make a force field barrier, a visible, tangible barrier across the whole thing, which entailed a ton of rotoscoping. As you can see, Cor was just standing there for a long time, and now Kirk here a long time with all that hair. That would have been a royal pain in the butt to have to roto all that. So if they became overwhelmed by that, I guess I can't really blame them. But as a last minute thing, I had to step in. So I just did it the old fashioned way and made it kind of look like the force fields that had been used on the brig, on the Enterprise, and as I seem to recall, on the Tanos colony in it was an Errand of Mercy. I don't remember the title of the episode, but there were a couple of times when we went to various penal or mental colonies, one of which is where we met Laura Garth. And I seem to recall that they had doorways like that. Now, their doorways, I believe they had practical neon or fluorescent or some other kind of lighting in there that actually worked. We couldn't do that. So I did this with visual effects, just using basic matting. I didn't even have a lot to rotoscope, really, and that's part of the reason I did that along the doors, was to keep it simple and get it out the door fast. And it does. It kind of looks very TOS. And so I just simply did it by matting out the green. It was a nice bright green in the door, dropping out the green, and just putting in some fractal patterning behind there that kind of moved a bit, and superimposing it several times with glows to make it hot and hotter and hotter and blow out. And that's how you created the pulsing and surging effect. It kind of reminds you of live electricity in a way. And that's sort of in an abstract way what I was going for. So now you'll see I also get to do the paint stick zap, and you'll see it glow through his skin here. Zap, goes right under his skin, some smoke comes up, which I liked. Mark Lewis, the post supervisor, did not like the smoke. I liked it, and it got conveniently forgot to get removed. And I was thinking about putting a mechanical device in front here to represent the Mind-Sifter, but Mark overruled that rightly, saying that let's keep it better to scary suggestion. And I agree with that too. That's fine. Very Hitchcock way of doing things, and I like it. So here we are headed somewhere, and here's Sulu and his all-girl bridge band orchestra. Until Spock walks in and ruins everything. There you can hear my chair creaking. I'm rocking back and forth in my office chair. I apologize. So here's where Spock shows just a bit of humanity and allows Sulu to go to the memorial service. It is almost Christmas time as I record this, and I am eating a mint.
Join your crewmates.
Wouldn't you like to have a mint right about now? Just a nice little after-dinner mint? No, boy, I couldn't possibly. Sorry, a little Monty Python, Mr. Creosote slipped in there. Didn't mean for that to happen. So here we go into the memorial scene.
of peace.
Some of the people in the background I know, some of them I do not. One person you just saw go by there was a fellow named Clint Walker, who plays a wonderful 60s era Batman. There he is just on the far left of the screen, the tall fellow in the blue. And when he is in the cowl, you'd swear he's Adam West. It's astonishing, the resemblance. I don't know what he does with his mouth, but somehow he becomes Adam West. So he and I made a little video together of him beaming in on the transporter platform, realizing he's in the wrong franchise, walking up to the camera and saying, "I'm supposed to be on ABC," and pow, right into the camera lens. That was pretty fun. I think you can find that online somewhere. That's pretty funny. It's on YouTube.
It'd be easier if we knew how he died. There were body to weep over. But that's a luxury not afforded us. So we grieve in the absence of answers. But we grieve because we must.
And there's Zahn, of course, played by Patrick. This speech McCoy gives is wonderful, and it's further helped by this just creamy Finnerman-style lighting. And Jeff Bond had worked with Jerry Finnerman and was, in fact, using some classic 1960s era lenses and photographing his film, from what I know. But look at that wonderful amber rim lighting on the hair. I used to use that similar amber when I was lighting at Valley Cable TV. That's one of my favorites. It reminds me of the warm tones of lantern light in the old California missions. I always did like a warm amber rim light. You'll see that a lot of the bridge used as well, especially in evening shift stuff. Sometimes they'll use blue backlighting as well. But here the lighting is just elegant, wonderful, soft, creamy lighting. Here it's night shift on the bridge, so there's a little darker. It's not nearly as filled on Spock's shadow side. And again, the backlighting here is red. Often this denotes night shift or gamma shift aboard the Enterprise. And yes, they did work with that concept from what I have heard. The idea of changing the color and style of lighting to represent the three different shifts, with gamma shift or the graveyard shift having the most subdued lighting and deepest shadows, because humanoids theoretically will still be a diurnal species and will need to have the simulation of day and night for their circadian rhythms, even in the future. And so here Jasmine sings Amazing Grace. I have been reading on the internet and the blogs and the fanosphere, if you will, a number of people griping about her singing Amazing Grace. I don't have a problem with it at all. I don't see it as a religious thing. I see it more as an act of respect and reverence and tradition than anything else. Remember, these people are essentially descendants of Earth's Navy, and Earth's Navy has traditions dating back hundreds of years. I was personally trained by the Coast Guard Auxiliary as a sailor and learned of many of those traditions. Now, I think those would carry forward into Starfleet as a matter of respect, if not practicality. Now, here we come to one of my magnum opuses in the show, Gateway, the Guardian of Forever. Since before your sun burned hot in space, and before your race was born, I have needed to go to the bathroom. Everything you see there, except for the donut of the Guardian and the foreground stand itself, I created. The background is a multi-layered set of matte paintings and animated elements. I wanted it to look very much like the original series, only I just wanted it to seem as though we're able to see a little further into the background and a little wider. I didn't want it to seem as though it's been totally revamped. I just wanted it to be opened a bit more. On the original series, when they built this set, this scene, they had a very limited amount of space to work in that small stage 9 or stage 10 at Desilu. So they disguised it by using rock, like a rock canyon on either side of the frame, and just a little bit of mountains and temples in the background visible. So they really depended on that. But on the left side of the frame, they did have it open up, and you did see more background mountains and temples, just nothing terribly suggestive. So I simply took the same idea and opened it up just a little bit more and animated it, and I deepened the color down to seem more like dusk. When they filmed it, it was a little warmer. I cooled it down a little bit. But most of the elements you're seeing there are the actual elements that were shot on the original show. The pillars are the same, the actual ones. The rocks in the foreground are the actual ones. I simply cut them out from a still frame pulled off of a Blu-ray, and then added my own background and midground and foreground elements, which included things such as those block walls and pillars there to use as cutters in the frame to help create various levels so that it wasn't just all sand. Now there we get to see behind them. We get to flip the camera completely around, and for the first time we see what was back behind them, which they did not do at Desilu. You would have seen the camera crew. But that building you saw in the background was actually one of the few non-Romanesque structures. It was a more or less modern structure. It is actually the remains of the John S. Cook Bank building in the ghost town of Rhyolite, Nevada, a silver Comstock era Nevada ghost town in the desert, which you can go visit. It's a couple of hours north of Las Vegas. And it is a very beautiful old ghost town, which has been used in filming and movies. So now the Guardian gets to do its thing, and the dry eyes you see there I actually created. And here we get to look through the Guardian's time stream again from behind, as though we're standing back of it the other way. And I wanted it to look like it was water droplets, like the fog was actually composing the image. Not that the image was supered into the fog, that the fog was the image. So that's why it's got that speckling look, because I wanted it to seem as though the droplets of fog themselves, if you got right into it, you would see that they, that it falls apart, that you could see them for the particles that they are. And here, of course, we had a bit of Edith Keeler there, a bit of FDR, a bit of Hitler, a bit of the Hindenburg, and a hint of railroad drive locomotive wheels going on to tell you that time is marching on. The Industrial Revolution is taking us forward, forward, forward. I've got an entire presentation of the Guardian's time presentation on the end of the video of the online version of Mind-Sifter, and if you stick around after the screen credits, you'll be able to see it, along with a breakdown of my visual effects and Easter eggs, which I stuck in there, including an Easter egg in this scene, which is a Volkswagen. There is a Volkswagen somewhere on Gateway, and you'll see it in that presentation. So Kirk dives through the Guardian, and you'll notice the rippling effect I created. I had fun with that. Now, none of that window area there is real. That's all superimposed. I created that, including the outside. The ambulance was fake. It was just a still cut out of an ambulance animated by. The building out in the background is an old former hospital that is now gone. When I photographed that building, it was abandoned. It was creepy looking, looked just like a creepy abandoned asylum. And it ended up in the film. I'd always wanted to put it in the film, and there it is. Now it's gone. I am told that its roof collapsed in during a snowstorm or a major storm a couple of years ago. And as anybody who frequents ghost towns knows, once the roof goes, the walls will follow very shortly. So they demolished the building, I guess, after the roof caved in, and it's no longer there now. So tracking this shot was not terribly difficult. It doesn't move around a lot. I also removed an electrical outlet that was up on the wall just above Kirk's bed in several takes of the shot, and Tobias may have done such a removal as well. We'll see the window again in a moment, and in the next shot you'll see a hearse pull in. I guess not everything goes well at that hospital. The car you saw pulling out, by the way, was a period ambulance. And I went to great lengths to make everything as close to period as possible, which doesn't mean specifically 1958. There's a lot of things that got to be earlier, because just like with cars, if you're in 1958, you'll see the cars on the street are going to be dating back 30 years. There's the hearse back there, just pulled in. So here's Ticonderoga High School, which is doubling as the asylum. There's our plane up above that Shatner, it's the same plane, it's lettered for Gold Star Airways, the same airline that Shatner was flying on in Nightmare at 20,000 Feet. Notice in the background there, you saw a fallout shelter sign. You see that? That's right out of the 50s and 60s. You people who are under the age of 35, you probably don't remember those signs too much. But when I was growing up, most buildings that had a substantial basement had those. You had to. That was part of America's Civil Defense Network. Every last Friday of the month, when I was a young person, 10 a.m. in the morning, last Friday of the month, the air raid sirens would go off all over the nation at 10 a.m. And school kids, we all had to duck and cover under our desks, because we were actually trained that that's what you had to do if an atomic war happened. If a nuclear bomb were to fall on us, we were trained to do that. Yeah, right, like that's going to save us from a nuclear attack. But they trained us for that as a kid. I went through that. So here we did a lot of creepification of the hospital in these shots. We put bars on windows that weren't there. The state mental hospital is up above the cupola at the pergola there that was not really there. I put in little jokes in there. Somewhere in one of the windows, somebody put up a sign and tape that says, "Send pizza, day room." There is a dead skeleton corpse hanging up in the cupola, swinging by its neck by a rope. Shades of the Haunted Mansion. There is back there, that sign in the background, that yellow sign, emergency entrance for the ambulances. That's not really there. I superimposed that in. That was a very difficult track. This is a very, very long shot. And it touches back and forth and twists and turns like crazy. And that is not easy to track. If it were just static without them in it, or if it were moving without them in it, it'd be easy. But their heads tend to cause the tracking problem. You have to move around them and get away from them. And sometimes they interfere in area. It would be best to track in the center. But notice that they're interfering. They're moving in the center, and you can't track that. So you got to go all over the place, and it's a pain in the butt. It would have been easier to go out there with a big fake sign that you'd made it at Kinko's and just slap it up against the wall. So there, all of you who think we can fix it in post, we can't always. That thing cost me almost a week of rotoscoping and motion tracking for that one sign that nobody will ever notice. But because it's there, it further reinforces we're in a hospital rather than just some school building. Here we are in the school's library, and the crew had to remove all of the library books from all of those shelves at an ungodly hour of the morning. And then after this was done, they had to stick around for another 3 or 4 hours, put all those books back in order, Dewey Decimal System order. Now, I will let you in on one secret, and I don't want to step on anyone's toes politically. This character of Dr. Wright, originally I was slated to play the character of Dr. Wright, and I had invented an entire backstory. In my backstory, my Dr. Wright was born in 1900, and he had attended the Leland Stanford College to become a medical doctor and ended up serving in World War I. When he came back, he completed his residency and then ended up again serving in World War II. And after seeing all of the people, all the soldiers in World War II with what they then at that time called shell shock, which we later know as post-traumatic stress, he decided to go into psychiatry. So he went back to school in 1946 or 47 after mustering out of the war and did 4 years and became a psychiatrist, where he was called up again for active duty in Korea in 1950.
Showed too much compassion.
And ended up at the 8063rd MASH unit, where he became an apprentice to and colleague of Dr. Sidney Friedman, whom you came to know from the television show MASH. And so I had this whole backstory. I even created faked photographs of me and Alan Arbus as Friedman together, me with my dog tags and a Hawaiian shirt. It looked exactly like we were at one of the MASH units. And I was even going to have part of the signpost that said San Francisco, because that's where I was born and that's where, he went to school, Stanford. And so we're going to have MASH references in Dr. Wright's office. But unfortunately, I was not able to make it back to New York for the filming. So they went with this other very capable and wonderful actor to play an older Dr. Wright. Mine would have seemed a little bit younger probably. But I am in my late 50s. I am 56. I'll be 57 soon. So I could have been born in 1900 when this would have taken place. And I can guarantee you, my hair ain't gray and it probably will never go gray. My mom's hair never went gray, and I still don't have gray hair at 56. So I could have played the part and the age would have been accurate. So that is my one regret. I had always wanted to play Dr. Wright, and I didn't get to do it, but I did get to do some wonderful visual effects on this episode, and I'm very, very proud to have been involved with it.
Ready.
So coming up, we don't have too many more visual effect shots by me, with the exception of I handle Spock's reader, Spock's small computer monitor on his desk. He does a newspaper archive search. Oh yes, Kirk. Oh, I see you managed to get your shirt off again. he does a computer archive search, hunting for any information on Kirk in the historical records, newspaper records, anything like that. Had a lot of fun doing that. I encourage you to go through it frame by frame. Yes, you will see a ton of Southern California references there because, hey, I had fun with it. And frankly, most people won't go through it frame by frame, so they won't really perceive all that. But I did do it that way. Yeah. Here's one of my favorite shots, the shadow on the glass before they open the door. That's right out of the 50s and 40s and 50s. Wonderful filmmaking, folks. Also, one thing that happens is when Spock does his archive search, and we have the newspaper, the final results come up as a newspaper front page at the end of the search. I got to write up that front page and lay the whole thing out. Now, I am an accredited newspaper journalist. I was a newspaperman in the Washington, D.C. suburbs and D.C. and New York. And this scene threw me for a lot of laughs because I did this kind of thing for a living. I was actually a double threat. I was both a photographer and a reporter. And so I had very strong ideas as to how this scene should be handled. And I voiced them over the year that this show was being prepared and various aspects of it. So I get to lay the newspaper out, and there are 3 articles on the front page, 2 of which I pulled from the AP, actual articles. One of those 2 I embellished at the end as a joke, which references back to the Twilight Zone Nightmare at 20,000 Feet episode. And the 3rd article, which is about Kirk himself here, I wrote the entire article. And I sort of gave myself a paraphrased byline. My byline back then was Pony R. Horton, Time Staff Writer. So in this case, I gave it Pony R. Hudson, because I actually am a member of the Hudson family line. So I thought, well, let's just put that there. And I did. And the article is actually readable. It's just a few paragraphs. But I always hated when you'd see a newspaper on screen. I'd freeze and I'd look, and they'd either have an article that had nothing to do with what we were seeing, some stock article paste, or worse, just lettering gibberish that you would see often used for lettering and paste up layout graphics. And I hated that. Come on. It doesn't take much to just write a couple of quick paragraphs. And so I wrote them up, including laying out the photos, laying out the headlines, stylizing it. And I actually used the actual front page of one of the Binghamton city newspapers. And so I tried to make it as authentic as possible. And you'll be able to see it not only on Spock's reader, but also on the closing shot of the closing credits of the show. I also did the closing credits. I laid all those out. Here we see Spock's reader. There we are. Go through those frame by frame. You'll have fun reading that stuff. And all of these are my family members on those census records, by the way. That's my family census dating back to my great-great-grandmother, or I should say my great-great-grandfather, Aegeus Hudson, who was born in the 1850s, I believe. 1855, I think.
May I offer you a beverage? A Vulcan beverage? Oh, thanks.
So here we have a strong scene against Spock and McCoy as they try to come closer to terms with one another in terms of understanding each other. These scenes were wonderfully handled by everyone involved, and my hat's off to everyone.
You were supposed to be the captain's Dr. Tooth. You were closer to Jim than anyone. I'd be feeling it worse than anyone. I can be a good listener.
I am told that liquor that they were drinking was the most hideous concoction of Gatorade, lime juice, lemon juice, gasoline, jet fuel, urine, and I think they had me FedEx some of my spit. No, it was Gatorade and some kind of lemon juice. Mark wanted a believable reaction from McCoy as to this drink is not what I expected or something like that.
I'm going to regret this.
I had to do a drinking scene on camera once where I was drinking what appeared to be something like bourbon or scotch on the rocks, and it was basically nothing but watered down Coca-Cola. So that was fine.
Something unexpected.
Doctor, we have known each other a long time. We have argued a great deal. This time, I need you to trust me.
So here again, notice the strong use of shadow in this. I really appreciate Jeff's lighting here. Not everything has to be constantly hit with tons of fill light all the time. You can let the shadows speak for your mood, and don't be afraid to use some color here and there. And I really, honestly, in terms of the lighting, think this is our best show since Katamba, and probably our best looking show, period.
Each other. To be blunt, Doctor, I will need you. We will need each other.
I do trust you because I know you. And I know that you will.
And this close-up on Jeff Bond here, playing Dr. McCoy in this upcoming shot, is one of my favorite McCoy moments in this episode. I like the way he delivers his lines. I like the intensity in his eyes and the angle and cant of his face. Where he, right here, look at this. He looks down, he concentrates, and he says, "You, what would you?" I really am impressed with him. He's not trying to act it. He's just honestly allowing what level of intensity is required for that moment, that emotion, that conversation. These two are pros.
I respect you, Captain.
And here's the newspaper headline. And yes, I use the word amok on purpose, as in amok time. I am, if nothing else, a major league Star Trek fan. That is part of why I'm so honored and thrilled to have a chance to do this, because I actually get to have a say in influencing the look of Star Trek Phase 2. James Cawley has been incredibly generous to me in giving me a very free rein, a very free hand in how I am allowed to make the effects look, as long as they look like Star Trek, the original series, or even a little better than that. James is fine with what I do, and I have been given enormous creativity, and this is a bucket list constantly. It's hard work. It's very difficult. I bust my ass doing this stuff, folks. But I'll tell you, it's a dream come true. When I was growing up, going through college, I never dreamed that I'd be getting to head up visual effects on anything involving Star Trek. Even if it's just a, quote, fan film, we really have surpassed mere fan films. These are professional outings and efforts. And these are things that are being, we're being put up on IMDb, for crying out loud. We're getting credit for this. And we have fans all over the world saying, how come CBS and Paramount aren't making these, aren't paying for these? And I'm just proud to be involved in any way, shape, or form, because film can be forever. And we're getting to make Star Trek, hopefully, the way Gene Roddenberry would have wanted. Let me say that again. We're getting to make Star Trek, hopefully, the way Gene Roddenberry would have wanted. And it's a privilege to do so. I always did love that blue lighting on Spock's radar.
Mr. Sulu, bring us to synchronous orbit.
Aye, sir. Entering orbit. Captain.
God, those Klingon ships are awesome. The Planet Gateway never looked better. I am totally impressed with Tobias' work. Notice the rippling going on behind the impulse vents. That's so cool. Proximity alert. And you're going to see by the way, the view screens, those are mine also. I created the view screen because I was sick and tired of the old view screens, because nobody, it seems, no offense to anybody else, all my prior effects people, I love you very much, but nobody got the blue neon banner on the view screen right, and I think that I got mine the closest. Plus, nobody had the red alert lights reflecting on the notice the railings there, the red is reflecting there. Well, they did that in the original series, but nobody seemed to have gotten that on ours, so I went to work and I did some stock view screens for both red alert and non-red alert, and now we're using them hopefully forever and ever and always. And here's my Klingon transporter effect, which is basically just the same as the original transporter effect, just turned sideways and swirled around three-dimensional shapes to get a 3D swirl effect. Notice also on the panel that they're using, you see some of the Time Guardians display going on there. That shot was very difficult because that had a very good clear look at the fake sand up against their real sand. My matte shot sand had to match that real sand perfectly, and that was one of the hardest matte shots to do on the show. Matching sand ain't easy. And here we go. Constellation does a barrel roll, flips up around, and uses its dorsal phasers to fire down on the Klingon ship, was not expecting such a move, which gets her up out of the line of fire and softens up the Klingon ship for the other Federation cruisers to come in and let her know, "Hey, you Klingons, get off my lawn!"
On course for Klingon space.
Klingons are no fools. Strategy. It is always about strategy.
Captain, before going into warp, the Klingon sent a very strange message. It reads, "You'll never find him." Find who? Sir, the Lexington is hailing us.
On screen.
Very interesting, Captain Spock. You planned this quite well.
It was the logical thing to do.
However, you disobeyed direct orders, and I had no choice but to take you into custody for gross insubordination. We'll be alongside in 60 minutes. Will that be enough time?
Yes, Admiral.
Lexington out.
Time enough for what?
Transporter room. Prepare to beam down landing party to planet's surface. Do you wish to accompany me, Doctor?
And stop me.
I will assume your response to be in the affirmative. Mr. Sulu, you have the con.
So he went through the Guardian.
Dr. Mabenga's office.
James T. Kirk never would have given up the location of his world.
I have to say, Jeff Bond wears a shirt and tie very nicely.
How can you possibly know that?
A psychic link, Doctor. The result of many mind melts throughout the years. Jim has been calling out to me since the day he vanished. I needed time to work through the mental images.
And transporter room George is now open.
Until now, I did not know where or when he was.
When, Captain?
The computer archive.
I'm giving you sync points in case you need to sync it up.
From Earth, 1958. Jim was found by authorities and taken to an asylum.
You knew he was alive. Why didn't you just say so?
I love the richness of the aqua-colored lighting behind the transporter console, the transporter chamber, I should say.
Spock.
That's one thing that's hard to get right, is the exact tonality and level of
You're in Jim Cole.
brightness of that light, as well as the color. And that's part of what really makes it look 60s. That Ripley drum wrap with that fluorescent-ish, kind of aqua-ish lighting back there. It's so rich and creamy. And once again, here comes one of my patented Pony Express transporter effects. This time using the actual Alka-Seltzer elements that I created recently. So this is actually a newer transporter effect that I've used on prior Phase 2 episodes. In fact, I think this is one of the first times I will have used it. And you'll see it looks a little sketchier and thinner than prior episodes. I was hoping to harken back to more like the Season 1 of the original series. Nice and subtle. Now, here again, the entire window panel on the door is not there. And boy, I had a time matting and creating reflections that weren't there, and shadows that weren't there, and movement that wasn't there. And so there you go. And then McCoy comes bursting in a moment later. And technically, this will be the last of my visual effects shots on the show. So I will bid you adieu here. However, if you wish to stick around for my BTS reel, please do so. You'll see how the breakdown of some of the visual effects shots there, as well as some Easter eggs. And I will also have a audio reel recorded there too. So a commentary reel recorded there too, I should say. So I will end this commentary right here, and I will see you again at the visual effects Easter egg reel, just at the end of the closing credits of this episode. So until I see you there, or hear you there, thank you very much for watching this episode of Star Trek Phase 2, Mind-Sifter, my 10th episode as a visual effects artist with Phase 2. And it's been a pleasure to be able to share my impressions with you. Bye.
Really you? I'm here to take you home.
Where? Please.
I thought I made that plain. His home.
Please tell me. I have to know.
You wouldn't believe me.
I need to know.
You wouldn't believe me. It's time to go.
Jim.
Spock. So he was telling the truth.
Yes,
All that talk about stars and planets.
he was telling the truth.
Then take me with you. I want to go where my skills as a doctor will be respected.
I'm sorry, Doctor. It would disrupt the time stream.
Doctor, you gotta stay here and make a difference in your own time. Otherwise, it won't get better.
What if I told you that he needs me, that he's dependent on me?
Just sit down.
What if I told you that I love him?
Love is irrelevant, Doctor.
I don't want his love. I just want to be respected. I want to make a difference.
You just saved the finest captain in Starfleet. You can be proud of that.
Dr. Hanlon, Jim was kidnapped. He was brutally tortured. They have taken his memories, his identity. If they have followed previous practice, they have imprinted him to suffer in agony at the very mention of his name. We have the technology to undo this. He will be okay. But you will be alone. In a very different place, a very strange place. Dr. McCoy is right. Your place is here. I believe that your presence here in this time is critical to achieving the respect all in your agenda deserve.
Thank you. I understand. Jim, I'm gonna be safe now. It's time for you to go.
Going home?
Yeah. Dr. Bones and Mr. Spock are taking you home.
Come on, Jim. We gotta go.
I understand.
I suppose this is where you swear me to silence. Ask me to forget that I ever met you or found out where you're from. Or the hope that I have for the future.
I would not ask that. But if you permit me, I can ease your pain.
Not again.
2 weeks since we rushed to K7 from Gateway. No explanation. No orders. Starfleet just sticks us out here, station keep. Can't even swing a little shore leave.
Perhaps a Klingon border incursion would have been better.
There's a message coming through. It's from Admiral Withrow aboard the Lexington.
Patrol orders. At last.
That's strange. We're being told to stand by. The captain is beaming over.
We need an admiral to tell us the captain is back aboard.
It's not like Spock to stand on ceremony.
Captain!
All right, that's enough. Remember, you're not fit for duty until I say so. To sickbay with you, Jim.
I'll be there in a minute. Oh, what are we all standing around for? There's work to do.
Welcome back, Captain.
I missed you. I didn't realize how much. Until now. Come.
Captain.
Mr. Spock. So, I was gone 3 months?
In our time stream, yes. However, the Guardian was able to put us within 5 weeks of your arrival on Earth.
Long enough. Too long. So, Withrow gave you your own ship. Why did you accept?
My place is here.
Still, the way you handled those Klingons, they're gonna be even more trouble now that they know about Gateway.
The Guardian is aware that not all who approach have good intentions.
Will it allow us to supply a security force?
No. But it would allow a research team, representing all governments in the quadrant.
Spock? I don't know what else to say except thank you.
That is unnecessary, sir.
I don't think so. You saved history. You saved the Federation, and you saved me. You're being prideful, Mr. Spock.
Unlikely.
Well, thank you for indulging in my human sentiment.
Perhaps you will indulge in a sentiment of my own.
And that is?
I respect you, Jim.
Bridge to Captain Kirk. There is a Priority 1 message from Starfleet Command for you, sir.
Captain Kirk here. Put it on my monitor.
Welcome home, Jim. Welcome home.
Hi, I'm Pony Horton once again. This is the Visual Effects Easter Egg Reel, brought to you by me. Thank you. Now, here's the first one. That entire fluorescent light fixture and part of the ceiling and cobwebs are not there. What you see is that. The original lamp which is there, which is a much more 1970s style lamp. So here I created a 3D lamp matte shot with Lightwave and added camera effects and shading effects and superimposed it in, rotoscoped out the heads of the actors, and made sure the camera was tracked, and off to the races. Next big shot, Kirk's room. There's my friend Orion. No, we are not in space. We are in Kirk's room, going through the window with the glass and everything. None of that was there. It was all green screen, all put together in Lightwave, TV's dirty little secret, including the graffiti on the wall pecked in by some former inmate. One flew east, one flew west, one flew over the cuckoo's nest. And also notice the dates, 12345/12345/. The window and the door isn't really there. Again, put in with Lightwave, all the reflections hand animated. And they dump him down, and they chose to color this shot very green, so I had to reflect that in my work. And again, the entire panel is not there. I created that in Lightwave. There's the original shot. And it speaks for itself. There you go. This ambulance, none of this was there. Here's the breakdown for the ambulance and the window. It was all a green screen. So here's the former abandoned hospital in Ticonderoga, which I photographed, used as a matte painting. I added atmospheric treatment. I then added a period 1950s ambulance, which I also atmosphere and lens treated, shrunk down to the appropriate size, put the windows over it. That window consisted of at least 9 elements, and then I animated the ambulance and superimposed it all into the scene with Kirk. Then I had to add the doggone flickering from those lights. Now the Twilight Zone is not really on TV in the background, and yes, I put Shatner freaking out at just the right moment to coincide with what was happening in our Captain Kirk. Of course I did that for fun. It was fun. And no, I know spaceships don't make sound in space. Next question. Foley artists. Rod Serling's most beloved teacher was a woman named Helen Foley, age 22, whose life has been one of unrelenting sameness. So I decided to honor her by putting the Foley artist's name there. Here's my matte shot of the exterior of the hospital, completely stylized and fake. Nothing there is real. And yes, as a friend of mine used to say, why don't you shut up, you asshole, I'll take you to Binghamton and get $50 for you. He used to say that to me, and so that's how I got the Binghamton joke. Because there's the asylum at Binghamton. He'd say that to me. So, and here's the establishing shot of the hospital, which uses Ticonderoga High School. So we creepified it. The caduceus up there, the falling apart plaster, the letters falling off, the schmutz coming down from the window bars, the skeleton hanging by a neck in the cupola, blowing gently in the breeze. Imagine if lightning were to go off. Ooh. The civil defense warning, fallout sign. Of course, those were all over the place when I was a kid. And the Nightmare from 20,000 Feet plane, the same model of plane, same lettering, hopefully the same color scheme and everything as seen in the Twilight Zone. And all my little newspaper headlines, which again I encourage you to look through frame by frame, and you'll see all kinds of interesting stuff, including a number of references to the 1971 Sylmar quake in the San Fernando Valley, which I remember with great fear. And these are my relatives, of course, dating back to my great-great-grandfather, Aekius Hudson. And yes, the people of Gateway drove around Volkswagen. They had to get around somewhere. They just walk in sandals all over that terrain. So, with no further ado, we go to the Guardians Earth History presentation, including a special interlude featuring William Mulholland, the man who brought water to Los Angeles. Mulholland was a very controversial figure over the years. He was much beloved in Los Angeles while he was alive, and he's the one who brought the Los Angeles Aqueduct to us. We did not have reliable water in Los Angeles until 1913. And he built what was at the time probably the single most amazing engineering feat next to the Panama Canal. And the aqueduct still serves us regularly and well to this day. It uses no pumps or power to move the water over 230 miles. From the high Sierra all the way down to Los Angeles. It has been a controversial aqueduct in the 100 and some odd years that it's been in existence. And I am an unabashed fan of Mulholland and his work, even though he did make mistakes. and there were problems down the line. So you'll get to learn a little about William Mulholland in this little interlude that I created, which is actually a conceit. It is from my own docudrama film that I produced about 14 years ago called A Test of Integrity. It stars Victor Izay from the Billy Jack films as William Mulholland. I've still never completely finished the film. There's a lot of visual effects work that I have yet to do. But the story is, a lot of it's out there. You can look it up on YouTube, and you can see a lot of other clips from it on my YouTube page. But here you'll see a bit of it coming right up. He happens just after the advent of flight. The aqueduct was opened in 1913, just after the Titanic disaster. And here we go, and we actually dive right in, and there's Mulholland, and boom, in we go. Introduce yourself, Bill.
Hi, I'm William Mulholland.
And that pipe you saw behind him actually is the Jawbone siphon of the Los Angeles Aqueduct up in the Jawbone Canyon east of the High Sierras in California. This is actual footage of the opening of the aqueduct combined with my recreated footage of Mulholland in an interview. Now, the words Mulholland is speaking are William Mulholland's actual words, although in some cases, some of these words were taken from other speeches, not necessarily on that day in 1913. However, what he is saying is actually William Mulholland's own words, and we had actors come out, including Victor Izay there, to the actual aqueduct cascades right there. That's the opening gates of the cascades, and we're standing, those cascades are just up out of camera range. And that's what he really said there. There it is, take it. Most famous 5 words in Los Angeles' history. And that's what it looked like the day they opened in 1913. And 40,000 people came out up across the desert San Fernando Valley to see that aqueduct open up. And yes, the chief was a profane at times man. He did it with a great sense of humor. And he did in fact say the following words: "I'd rather give birth to a porcupine backwards than be mayor of Los Angeles." So here are more of Mulholland's own words in an interview format.
You want to know what really bothered me about the whole thing? For years now, idiot socialists like Job Harriman and the gullible saps who followed them have been accusing me of either being in cahoots with the San Fernando
The
Valley
bridge, by the way, behind him is the same bridge that was used in the movie Chinatown, where we see Jack Nicholson's character of Jake Gittes standing on the bridge as he looks down into the dry riverbed there, and he sees somebody down there and he goes to talk to them. And so that's the same bridge. It's the Foothill Boulevard overpass over the Tujunga Wash as it comes out of Big Tujunga Canyon just above Hanson Dam in the northern end of the San Fernando Valley.
This water is for the city of Los Angeles. No kickback deals with my ditch. That's what they want. They can bloody well go to Chinatown.
And yes, that is a deliberate joke about Chinatown. Notice the period vehicles that are CGI'd into the background, the horse hauling the milk wagon and the Model A's and the Model T's going by, and those red cars you saw earlier. All of those would have been seen up there at that time, which is 1927.
Water was intended for the city of Los Angeles first. The ranchers in the San Fernando Valley wanted it. I told them they'd have to build their own water system or irrigation district at their own expense. Even then, they'd only be able to use surplus water, which they'd have to pay for. I mean, my aqueduct wasn't meant to be
And
a
now
giant
we
garden
bid adieu to Mulholland
San
and
Fernando Valley, you know.
head back to Gateway.
No, sirree.
E.F. Keeler, Hindenburg, FDR, the boxing poster, Pearl Harbor. Here's World War II, real color footage from B-17 cockpits. Here's an anachronism. Golden Gate Bridge being built was actually in 1937. There's a GS-4 locomotive at Glendale Station in Glendale, California. There's a ship in San Pedro, I believe, or possibly San Francisco. World War II flights. San Francisco in the late 40s. Los Angeles in the early 50s. And you are there. Wonderful color footage of Los Angeles in the late 1940s, Hollywood Boulevard, and parts of downtown L.A. Now this was to represent Kirk getting crazier and crazier in his mind just before he took the leap through the Guardian. And of course the atomic test heralded in the late 1950s, early 1950s, and late 50s, and that's where he would have dove through, and in fact he did. If you look at the footage when he dives through, he goes through right at the nuclear explosion.